we'll just tell you stuff from our perspective. That, first of all, that October date, whatever, for student growth.
The booster session, is that what you're talking about?
The booster session. Don't miss that. That, if you're struggling writing your goal, they will help you through it. They will give you plenty of examples of how to do it. I actually just took one of theirs and just kind of changed it to meet my needs, and not to add any percentages to your goal is highly recommended, because if you don't meet the, my kids will increase by 50% or whatever you have as a number. That's really risky. In the Auburn School District, you could just use the term increase or improve, and would be totally okay doing that.
Did they tell you that? Like, don't use numbers?
No.
Oh, that's our advice. Don't use numbers.
Open, just keep it very simple and basic.
And there will be people who will want to do percentages, because that's how we've done it in the past. And okay, so I said, go ahead and put the percentage in, then erase it, and then put the word increase or improve or whatever. It's going to save you lots of stress from doing that. And then
if you're in a special ed person, you're used to having to write that percentage or some number into a goal, and that was the struggle that I had when I started writing student growth goals. Is I was a special ed major, and I was like, you gotta have 80% in there or something. You don't stay away from that, because you just kind of lock yourself in and you limit yourself. And the other one was the small group one. That keep that larger than 3. I think kind of the number we've been talking about is somewhere between 8 and 10. We have schools in this district with a high mobility rate. I know I'm at one of those schools. If you set your small group at 3 and one of those students moves out, you're down to 2. And so you're just making that a really difficult goal to meet.
Right, and playing the percentage game.
Right.
You lose 1 out of 3, you're at 66%. You lose 1 out of 10, you're at 90%. It still is, each person only lost 1 kid, but the way percentages work. So you just be careful.
And the length of time in which you're going to do your student growth. I do it for 4 weeks. And first week I do a pre-test, the 4th week I do a post-test, and then I do 2 formatives in that 2nd and 3rd week, and then I'm done with that particular part of my evaluation. Try not to, I would highly recommend not do a whole year. Don't do maps. Maps, a lot of times the testing is after the window of May 15th, which is when your evaluation has to be done, and so your documentation won't even be complete.
So you guys change kids at semesters sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so in elementary school, that's not as much the case. I've seen teachers in elementary school go like September to March or something like that. Maybe they're doing reading fluency or math back fluency. That's completely appropriate. We do that at the elementary level, but just be cautious with that at the intermediate level.
Yeah.
You want to keep that same group of kids.
I do think it's okay too. For me, student growth is the hardest thing. Like, to have to write a student growth goal. Never in my career before had I ever written a goal like this, right? Where I had to write a goal and say students were going to improve. Did I write professional growth goals? Yes. Have I written goals before? Yes. This is different. To say that kids are going to improve this much over this amount of time, I had never done that before. And I feel like elementary, you're a little bit lucky because you have those fluency things that are kind of easy to track, right? I'm assuming. Special ed, you're used to those goals for your students. High school chemistry? No goal. I've never written any kind of goal. And I completely said it to my administrator several times. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. So it's okay to say that. It's okay. And at this point, because we've been doing it several years, your administrator is probably either going to directly help you or put you with someone who teaches the same thing to help you. At the time, nobody had done them, right? The first few years we were doing this, we were kind of a pilot group, or whatever you call it, beta group. And there was no one to go to ask for. And so I was serious. I want a sentence starter. I want something where all I have to do is fill in the blank. And it's okay to do that, right? They ask us to give things and those resources to our kids all the time to make it easier for them. It's okay for us to ask for that assistance too. It's okay to say, I need help with this. I need to know, what does it look like? And I know they'll always come up with their examples, but it's okay to sit down and write it together and fill in the blanks together, and don't feel bad about that. I think they're pretty used to it by now.
Well, and you don't have to use state tests or district tests for your goal. I teach PE, so I've used pickleball, I've used refusal skills, and sometimes people get honed in on the district testing or whatever. You don't have to do that. It could be a unit that you do. I usually do pickleball because I usually have 6th graders who are coming in, they know nothing about pickleball, they fail the test, and I'm like, not in front of them, but I'm like, perfect, because there's going to be perfect documentation, and then proceed on, and then the growth. Or I could use it for gymnastics because a lot of kids don't know anything about gymnastics, and do that at the very end. And so think big. You know, don't just think about those district tests that you're required to do.
Also, if you're a little stuck, you can go back and tie it to your SIP goals as well. Maybe look at what reading or math SIP goals are in your building and see if you can tie it in there. That's a really good way to make that connection.
Yeah. I will just say this, there's, with comprehensive, you have a big goal, and that can be your department. And then you have your grade level group, then you have a smaller goal for you, and then there's a subgroup which you choose a small targeted population that you have in your classes. There will be a lot more, but that's what all of this embeds. And it goes back to your principal's evaluation that I showed you yesterday. It nests within, it goes to the admin evaluation, which goes to the bigger district goals.
Oh. Well, this is a nice handout, but you know, some of you just assess every single day, whether it be thumbs up or it might be an exit ticket or something like that. And then of course we have state tests that we do, and so there's lots of things that you'll do. If you're a first year teacher, you may have some ideas, and maybe you have lots of ideas, or maybe you just have a few ideas, but even yesterday and today, I've already learned something from this group, and I thought, oh, I'm going to try that, you know, and that was, I give an exit ticket and then have them judge where they feel that they fit on the continuum, and I thought, that's easy to do, I could do that. I'd like to find out what they think, because sometimes, I don't know if you know this, but kids also see themselves and they judge themselves way harder than how their peers see them. Probably what you were talking about, how you see yourself versus what the administration sees you.
Something to note, because I had half of mine returned for my fault and or a teacher's fault, you get to sign it 2 times. You sign it in the fall when you work with your admin, and then you sign it again in the spring, or when you're finished with your goal and you do your results. We'll get them back from HR, and we get to finish that.
I will suggest when you're filling this out, my recommendation, and they probably can also have their input, but I would go to criterion 6 and fill that out first, because it's going to be your whole group goal. And then I immediately go to criterion 3, which is your smaller group goal, which can be the same, and mine always has been, as what criterion 6 is, but usually I'm thinking whole group, and then I'm going to do a subgroup. And I always say, well, they organize it wrong on the paper, but that's just because of who I am. But so I automatically, and I told our staff, go do criterion 6 and then go to do criterion 3, and you'll find it easier to follow along.
You will get that electronically, so you can type in it too.
And then save it.
Yeah.
Because then next year, you can just update it.
You can, you can collect your data and put it on a spreadsheet, and just, I mean, that's all you need. Just have make a Excel spreadsheet, and if you're collecting data weekly, however you're collecting it, just put it on. You don't need to save it all.
Yep, I turn in 2 pieces of paper only because I make tons of observations to turn it in. But it could be a 1-page. But do not bring their pre-test or post-test, their post-test, their quizzes, or whatever you did for formative, and bring that in there, because they really don't want that.
I did. So, do administrators then not require like a SMART goal where it has to be all those different letters and stuff? That's not an Auburn thing?
It is in some things, but not necessarily.
No.
Like,
Not
we've
for
done
growth
smart
goals.
goals in school improvement and other things,
Right.
I've seen smart goals, but not
Not for
for
students.
this.
We won't discourage it, but we would discourage, as they said, like very specific names or specific numbers. We'd like it to be a little more open so that you guys are successful and you don't feel like you're caught somewhere.
If you feel like you have to put a percent, put the percent down, erase it, and then say increase. I sat down with a teacher last year for 2 hours after she had gone through the training, and then I did a special session in PLCs for people who wanted to write their goals because they were so like, I don't know how to do it. And we wrote goals right there, and then about, I'd say April, I get this email from this teacher, and she's like, I don't get it. So I went down there and I said, okay, how can I help you? And I spent 2 hours with her. And because she just didn't understand how all of it connected, and I said, well, some of it doesn't connect to each other. For example, if you have your student goal, your administrator does not have to see you teaching that student goal. It's kind of separate, and so you don't need to worry about that.
With your targeted group, you don't have to collect prior evidence of like, yes, the girls are performing lower, or yes, the students who are speaking Spanish or bilingual are also performing lower. Is that just kind of your judgment?
No,
There's usually a pre-assessment.
Yeah.
Pre-assessment.
Pre-assessment,
Yeah.
okay.
So in pickleball, I have 6th graders. They know nothing about pickleball, so I'll just say, hey, we're going to take a pre-test tomorrow. Bring a pencil. So they bring a pencil, and they don't know anything. Which, in that case, because anything I'm going to teach them, they're just going to, when they get that same test again in week 4, there's just going to be all this growth going on.
So, but that evidence you don't have to show to an administrator, for example.
Well, I put it on an Excel program of what their score
Okay.
was.
So what I'm interested in seeing is not the collection of tests or any of that stuff itself. What I'm interested in seeing is, where did your students start? Where did they get to their midway point? What did you do to get them there? And where did they end? How did they increase? And what instructional strategies did you use? And those other pieces are going to be more of that anecdotal stuff. If you're somebody who has to save paper because you collected for a hobby or I don't know what, there are some of my staff members that collect for hobby, I think. Collect a couple of each, a couple samples of your low performers, a couple samples of your mid performers, and a couple of your high performers. If that's what you need to do to feel like you're doing justice for your students. Lots of staff, they just set up an Excel and they put, in one column, pre-test, they name it, they date it. They give me 1 or 2 formatives in between, and then they give me a post-test at the end, and they give results. Some people also will tabulate the retake test in another column for what they did, and then again create another percentage of growth or whatever that is for them.
And it doesn't even, like we said, no numbers. My
Yeah.
Excel sheet has a plus, a check, and a minus. So they met standard, they're close, or they're not. I mean, so you don't even have to have numbers for even for that. So it's just a track. So you need to have something to track.
Yeah, and I did 4, 3, 2, 1, so that they could see the growth. So I just learned something right here. I'm like, wow, I might consider doing that.
And so, like, one of my staff members, she used 5 of these students went from 3s to 4s. 7 of them went from a 1 to a this. So it's really just looking at that piece, and it'll be okay. I promise it will be okay.
So the student growth piece, I don't know if we just skipped that or whatever, but there's a part where you have to fill out and then you have to write your goal. I recommend, so they have the top part and you fill it out, but right here on the bottom here it says criterion 3 student growth goal. That's your small group. And then criterion 6 is your large group. And because I'm so linear, I always start with the big group and write the goal. and then I figure out what the small group is. It's the exact same goal, except I name what the small group is. And I found that it was easier rather than starting here and trying to write the goal and then trying to write it up there.
So part of that, I'll share a sample. One of my teachers that selected pickleball growth selected for their subgroup, and maybe they might be able to correct me, but it was students, I think we looked at students of diversity, because we had a lot of kids in that 6th grade class that had been, were ELL students or fairly new to the country. Probably their knowledge of what American sports even look like, or even what PE looks like in the American school system, was very different. So that was a good subgroup to use, and in that particular case it was a large number of students.
So I have to tell you what happened to me last year. 2 years ago I did the pickleball thing because I had 6th graders, and I'm like, okay, they won't know anything, this will be perfect. Well, last year I didn't have any 6th graders, I had 7th graders, so I'm like, well, I'm going to try this pickleball thing again. And I had 3 of my students ace the test on the pre-test. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do, And so I thought, so I really had to think, how am I going to get them from getting them all right? So I gave them an extra credit not the extra credit, but an extra question that was really, if you were going to make changes to the pickleball rules, what would they be, and how would that change the game? And thinking that question isn't too difficult. I found that those 3 people, they raised their hand and go, I don't get the question! And they really struggled, but then once they figured it out, they did really well. But it caused me as a teacher to say, okay, if you have a student that aces it in the pre-test, how are you going to make them move? The other thing I had those 3 people do is I said to the class, hey, these 3 people, I'm not only your resource, so if you don't know a certain rule, well, these 3 people right here, they aced the test, and so they are another resource for you. And those 3 kids are like beaming and so proud of themselves. And then they started helping people, and I'm like, okay, well, so it really stretched me to think, okay, well, what am I going to do in this scenario? Because I don't want to see them flatline, and it worked out well.
I would say that's also a good spot if you run into that, where you can release that locus of control. And it also, I would say this, I'll echo Superintendent's message, that's how you teach each and every kid and get growth with each and every student, is that the upper end. I think when we think about growth with kids, we think about that lower end, but in this case, she was able to show that growth of the other kids too. And I think we had a conversation more about those kids in some respects than we did about the subgroup, because it was a really great learning experience.
Okay, so I'm a high school English teacher, but this would also work for elementary teachers, where I'm thinking, like, my goal might be to improve base reading scores. So since we have STAR in this district, I'd probably choose SDQA, which is the San Diego Quick Assessment, which is a teacher administered test. That way the kids can't blow it off like they will MAPS. So I would give that at the beginning of the semester, and then maybe say in December before Christmas break, and then refer to what I did throughout the semester as my assessments to get to that point. And then I can use that for whole group and for the small group.
Yep.
Correct.
Sweet, I got it. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get your goal down.
Well,
It's easier to tone it down.
I'll isolate my lower
Right.
readers. Yeah. Okay.
And think, I tried to figure out what group could I use besides the usual small group that a lot of people use. And so I was going to do like free and reduced lunch, which I'm not privy to that information, but my administrator is, and they could at least give me the names of the people, so I could, at least I would know who they were.
I would encourage you also, especially if you're secondary, your whole group could be for all 150 kids, and a subgroup could be for your lowest performing class. So it could be for your 3rd period class, because as an average, when they started out, they were at 70%, but everybody else was at 75-ish%. So your subgroup doesn't have to be super super, super small or a specific demographic. It could be as large as a specific class period.
Any other questions, comments?
I have a question. I've heard a little bit about goal length that you were talking about a moment ago. So do you get to determine the scope of your goal? Like, say, I am going to do this pre-assessment second week of school, and I'm going to do another assessment a month later, and that could be, that is your student growth right there? You can do it like that? Because I guess I was under the impression that it was something, you do like a beginning of the year assessment, and then it's like their whole growth over the entire course of the year. No.
Remember, well, you may not know this because that's your next session, but the longer you stretch it out,
Yeah.
people are going to be moving in and out.
Okay.
I always do mine because I want to do it and then meet, the administrator. Here we go, mine's done.
Right.
And I always like to do mine at the beginning of the year.
off.
And I usually do a 4-week period. First week pre-test, last week post-test, then 2 formative assessments, and have document. But even during that 4-week process, and we don't have a lot of people that move. Last year I had 2 or 3 people move, and I was very alarmed by it because I thought, oh my God, it's going to mess up my evaluation.
Okay.
But it was fine because I chose like 9 people in that case, and so it affected maybe one of those.
Okay.
I think it depends too on like teaming, or it could be a part of a department. If your department makes a goal or your grade level makes a goal, sometimes it's nice to do the same goal. And so then, but it still would be you working with that group on timeline. So it still really truly is your goal. You're gonna have to say.
Okay.
As an administrator, we coach for shorter timelines because you do see growth in a short amount of time.
Right.
And it's also, you don't feel stressed at keeping data
Easier to
for
track it.
an entire year. You don't feel stressed about kids coming and going because it's not just the kids who leave, but where does the new kid fit in? When they come in, gosh, I don't have their first 3 pre-assessed or assessments, and now, so I think for teachers, I've heard the shorter, the less stressful it
Yeah.
is.
Absolutely.
Well, and some people think about first thing, well, we're going to do maps. I'll do the results of maps. Well, the problem is that everything has to be done by May 15th, and you may not do the maps until later on in the year, so you can't use
Right.
that as documentation, unfortunately.
Okay. Thanks.
I've heard you say that item 8 is either grade level or department, however it's situated. So for instance, my department comes up with a goal. Is that correct? Okay. But if my department's got several layers within it, English 10, English 9, English, I'm assuming each of those layers is going to come up with their goal. Right? Okay.
It depends on how your building is set. So I can speak to our middle school building. All of our ELA teams, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, made a decision that they were going to focus on close reading and comprehension for students. So their goal was to incorporate that within each unit and increase student comprehension through close reading. That was and so I had 7 adults, 7 teachers doing that. Some of those teachers then chose to make their goal 6 to fit within close reading and comprehension, and then as well as goal 3. A couple of them made a decision like, yes, we're working on this as a whole, but I feel that my 8th grade students really need to know how to cite sources appropriately and as they move on to the high school. So while they focused on this as a group, the 8th grade teacher chose to do source citation using a specific format. So it depends on how much you want to really focus on.
And it doesn't have to be a group goal, because I always do individual goals. Since I teach PE and not all of us are doing the same thing at the same time, oftentimes I'll do an individual goal, which is fine too.
So being secondary, what about the students that just don't come to class? So like you don't have data for them? So I know when I was doing my TPA and I had to show track room students, there was just students that had zeros because they never came. So how does that play into big numbers or not saying this
That's why
percentage, I mean, that piece, and that's why I said you could say your bottom third. Okay, yeah.
And
I mean, I don't know,
It's 50%.
right,
Yeah.
I think it's,
You have to,
in the rubric it says,
I think mostly,
mostly all
yeah.
are proficient. Okay. And then I believe it's all for distinguished has shown growth. And I would encourage you to have a conversation with your administrator. If you don't have base data for that student, it's difficult to say where they truly fall. For me, I don't believe that I would say to the teacher, well, they're obviously your lowest learner, because there isn't data. You know, so those are conversations, and that's how I would caution you in selecting specific kids or names, numbers, percent.
Yeah. Though I have picked specific kids in that scenario. I would have documented that they weren't there, so with a 0, and then if they never came, just 0, 0, 0, and unfortunately they would be part of my smaller group, but it's something like over 50% have to show growth. So again, that's why you use a little bit bigger number on the small group, because if I only use 3, now we're down to 66%, and if I have another kid that moves, which I've had that happen, I'm in a bad situation at that point. I can't meet that.
every administrator I've talked to is going to steer you clear of that situation. They, for the most part, really want us to do well, right? Even if they give us a low score, they actually have to do more work.
Well,
Right? It's in their interest to keep us doing well, and so they're going to keep. Every administrator I've seen that has even had someone they're concerned about, they just increase the conversations themselves. They want us to do well in almost every single situation.
The other thing too is, yes, you write your goal. Yes, you both mutually agree upon it in the fall, and you both sign off on it. If something happens because your goal is set to take place in January, February, and for whatever reason we've had to collapse a section and now you're teaching this instead, you can rewrite your goal and edit as needed, or if what you had planned on doesn't happen because certain kids move. Or it totally tanked because you took a major risk and it didn't go well. There's still time if you do it early, and I know that's why Sonia referenced doing it early, using a short window of time, so if something did occur where it didn't go well, you still have an opportunity to try again.